This is not an illustration. You're wondering, why is there grapefruit juice? It's because I want some grapefruit juice. Oh, so good. I know many of you don't like grapefruit juice. I know. How do I know this? Because nobody sells it around here. So whenever I see it, I have to buy it. I don't know. I hated it as a kid because it was super bitter. This isn't an illustration. It's just, I wanted some grapefruit juice, so there you go. All right, so where are we at? So we had broken, as we were going through the Bible, we got to a point where we had broken the former prophets where we were at, and then we had Christmas, which is great. How many of you love Christmas? There you go, a lot of it out there. We had Thanksgiving. How many of you love Thanksgiving?
Even more.
Even more. So it's been about 2 months since we've been looking in the former prophets. So what I wanted to do is kind of do a recap. So this week what we're going to do is we're going to recap and tell all of this stuff so you get the general context of where we're at. So once we start looking at Samson, next week we got a kind of an idea of where we're doing that. Now, hi, there you go. All right, so here's the deal. In Judges, we're in the middle of Judges is where we're at. So, but what I want to do is I want to take Judges and I want to zoom out. First of all, let's talk some theory of the Bible. Let's talk some stuff about the Bible. First of all, I absolutely believe that we have the book that we're supposed to have. Why? Because God meddles in the universe. So God makes sure that we have what we need as far as the text goes. And he uses men to write it down. He used men to edit and connect it together. And then he used men and women to keep it safe through persecution, through destruction, getting us all the way even to today. That is what we have with the Bible. So good job on the Bible, right? We're big fans of the Bible. What I would also say is that these are not artifacts. When they come to us, they're not just artifacts of earlier times and just kind of stuff together, kind of like a library. That there's actually purpose in the way that they were submitted and woven together. And when we talk about the former prophets, I know I've said this a few times, the former prophets are actually a collection of books that had been woven together as well. So somebody wove those together. They worked them together. If you read through the former prophets, Joshua, Judges, Samuel, Kings, when you look at those, you're going to notice that there's some feathering, some things that where one chapter kind of blurs into the next chapter. Somebody used threads to connect these things together because they're teaching the larger work. We talk about Judges. When we talk about Judges isn't just a collection of great Bronze Age generals. Because you know what? It's not about knowing all the Bronze Age generals. What Judges is about, is to teach us something that is going to be applicable to today. So the writer and organizer of Judges pulled specific accounts of Judges and wove them together so that we would have a lesson today that was something that we learned. And that process of weaving the Bible together and getting us a message to us, that had started even earlier than this. Now, I'm going to be a little geeky. I'm going to try to keep this short because I'm a bit of a Bible geek and I'm excited. And history. It's like Bible and history together makes me so happy. So I'm just going to look over here. Like, I should go over here. All right. So the Hebrew Bible, right? The Old Testament Hebrew Bible, they call it the Tanakh because that's like a T, that's like an N, and that's like a K. So it's T-N-K, the Tanakh. That's the Old Testament and for the Hebrew Old Testament Bibles. The T is for Torah. That is the first 5 books of the Bible that were written by Moses or that were woven together by Moses. The Torah. This next one is so Nevi'im, which is the prophets, and then the last one is the Ketuvim, and the Ketuvim is the writings. So sometimes in the New Testament you might say, or you see other words, it says in the law, it says the law, the prophets, and the writings. The law, the prophets, and the writings, the Torah, the Nevi'im, and the Ketuvim. That's the sense of it. So when we look at our block here, this is woven within this text. So Judges is in the midst of this larger text, and that's woven within, connected to the Torah. All on purpose. It's all on purpose. Toby, can you mute everything but red? Mute it all! So that we don't have the dirty potato potentiometer that goes, makes it sound like wind is blowing. A potentiometer is a slider. All right, so it all starts at the beginning, and I know you guys are all Bible scholars, right? So maybe not. We'll go ahead and start it out. So the very beginning of the Bible, we're going to talk from the beginning of the Bible up to where we're at, so that we get an idea of the context. Because like I've said before, a text without a context is a pretext for a fight, right? That's the idea. We want to get it all together. So the very beginning of the Bible starts out with a long time ago in the galaxy far, far away. That's not how it starts. Very similar to that, though, right? So the story starts at the very beginning. So we want to connect everything to the beginning. The very first sentence of the Bible, Genesis 1:1, is extremely important. And I'll tell you this, Genesis 1:1 actually is picking a fight right at the very beginning. And this isn't a fight about young earth or old earth. It's not. That's not the fight it's picking. It's picking a spiritual fight right at the very beginning. I love this. Oh, isn't Hebrew beautiful? Hebrew just looks cool to me. It just looks like art probably to you, but it goes from right to left. So Barashoth, right there is the beginning. And it goes this way. In the beginning. So what is it in the beginning? In the beginning, that word right there, it means in the before times. So in the before times, so there's the now times, there's the before times, and then there's the end times. That's kind of how it is. So in the before times, now Hebrew works different than, in English we go subject, verb, object. Right? Isn't that how we say it? Jack rode a bike. Right? That's English. Subject, verb, object. Right? That sounds right? Hebrew does it differently. They start out with verb, and then who does it? And other things. So what we have here is we have in the beginning was created by Elohim, by God. And then these right here, this is the object marker. This is a conjunction object marker. The is part of the word. Shemu, this right here is the heavens and the eretz. So Genesis 1:1 says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And that right there, again, is picking a fight. Because in the ancient world, when they used the word God, they were not using the word God the way that we use the word God. See, we have been affected by 2,000 years of Christian dominance on Western thinking. So when somebody says they don't believe in God, what they mean is they don't believe in an all-powerful force that created everything. When they say they don't believe in God in our culture today, they mean they don't believe in, essentially, the Christian God. But when this Bible was written, that wasn't how they believed. That's not what they thought. When they use the word gods, when they talk about gods, they're not thinking about an all-powerful creator of the universe. What are they thinking about? Is they're thinking about spiritual powers that can be manipulated one way or another for their things. And I know I talk about gods a lot, and I talk about, Marduk, or I talk about all these ancient gods, and I talk about God kind of opposing these ancient gods, and sometimes we can look at that and go, yeah, but that was then. We don't believe in gods like that. And I go, no, we believe exactly in the same kind of things, but we just don't call them gods now. We call them things like addictions. We call things like motivations, purposes. So in the ancient world, they believed that there were forces, like if somebody said, listen, I have this desire to drink and I just can't stop this desire to drink, it just attacks me. They're saying that there's something that's not me that is motivating me to do something else. In the ancient world, they go, yeah, we have the same thing too, we just call it a god. The god of wine, or the god of Bacchus, or whoever. It's the same sort of thing. Or somebody who says, man, I really love fishing. Fishing's my thing. That drives me. I get up in the morning and I think about just wanting to fish, and I hope the fish is good today. When I go out, I hope I get good fish. That sort of thing. They're like, oh, we got that too. So anything, or somebody says, even something like this, even good things like motherhood. They're like, what defines me as being a mother? That defines me. All I want to do is all I think about. And what happens is when they do that, we're kind of worshiping motherhood even over Yahweh. I love playing the violin so much, right? Right, Ricky? It's like, no? I get carried away. Or the spirit of this. So, like, things that we would call purposes, like, I think my purpose is to play football, or my purpose is to do this, or my goal in life, everything I'm driving toward is the spirit of this. All of these kind of things. Or even I'm carried away at the concert. All of these things, they would say, yes, all of those things, those are gods. Those are spirits. There was very little differentiation between spirits or gods. Or, boy, this place feels creepy. Yeah, feels creepy because of God. So all of these things that we still experience, and sometimes we prioritize, right? Again, is motherhood good? Yes. Difficult sometimes. But good, it's a blessing. It can be a good thing if we put it above God, then it's idolatry. Because we're worshiping the God of motherhood, not worshiping God. So the word Elohim, the word God, that is used right here, what is happening is the Hebrews actually are grabbing the word that everybody else says, the spirit of this, the spirit of this, the spirit of this. And the Bible starts out and saying, listen, when we're talking about this, we're not talking about the spirit of drinking, we're talking about the creator of heaven and earth. So we're using this word, we're grabbing this word. When we say judge, we don't mean like a guy with can rap order in the court. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the judge of the universe. When we're talking about a creator, we're not just talking about a potter. We're talking about the creator of all things. We see it like in Jonah, right? The book of Jonah. And everything's going crazy and people are going to drown. And the captain of the boat says, each man to their gods. And everybody runs to pray, right? And they wake up Jonah, who's asleep in the very bottom of the thing. He's like, ugh. Because what they're saying, whatever spiritual power that you can get us out of here because we're going to sink and die. And they say, and he goes, shh, who do I worship? The God I worship created everything. And they're like, ugh. They're terrified of him. Because you can't escape the God that creates everything. In the chaos of the ancient world, what would happen is if something had you, then what you would do is you would look for something else. You maybe see that sometimes in addiction, right? Somebody's addicted with something, and the solution is to get addicted to something else sometimes. Same sort of thing. That's the chaotic ancient world thinking. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about not looking for these things. We're looking above these things. The gods that were like Zeus, people like you may know, the pantheons, the mythologies that you probably are aware of, like Zeus or Jupiter, right? As the Greek or the Roman. You've got maybe Thor, right? Odin. Odin isn't the creator of the universe in that pantheon. Zeus isn't the creator of the universe in that pantheon. There's a creator above everything, and all the gods they're worshiping is underneath that. So that you can you're like, oh, you want to have another kid? Go talk to the fertility guy. Oh, you want to have one less kid? Go talk. No, I'm kidding. Anyway, so in the beginning, the very first verse is asking the audience to make a choice, asking the reader to make a choice. What God are you basing your life on? In the beginning, Elohim created everything. If he creates everything, by the way, that's an Amerism. When it says the heavens and the earth, it means everything you look up from the top and everything you look down to the ground. What is that? That's everything. So God creates everything. If God creates everything in Genesis 1:1, what we know about God, it's a theological statement. It's not specifically a historical statement, although it does say in the before times, he created everything. It doesn't say how long the before times are, it just says he created everything. But because he created everything in the before times, it means he's stronger than everything in the universe. It means he's bigger than everything in the universe. It means he's smarter than everything in the universe. It means he pre-exists everything in the universe. So the God of the Bible is transcendent. The gods in the ancient world were all birthed by something else. So right at the very beginning, The writer of the Bible is picking a fight, or giving us a choice. Choose which side you're going to go. All right, so Genesis. How many of you are familiar with the book of Genesis? A little bit? So we're going to go ahead and talk through. By the way, let me just say this. I stole a lot of really cool images from a great site. I love the Bible Project. I think they do really good, some explainer videos, some really fun stuff. And I wanted to put these all in here, and I stole some of their pictures and used all this. And I spent hours doing all this. And then last night, Josie yelled at me. Josie said, "You can't read that. You can't read that. I know you can't read that." I was just like, it's so pretty. I just wanted to share it. I wanted to do a commercial. And so what I had to do last night is redo all of my slides, which made me a little bit sad. So I replaced this Genesis with that Genesis. Is that a little easier to read? Yes. All right, so the first book of Genesis right here sets up. As a matter of fact, Genesis really kind of gives us, like in our hearts, we know that something's wrong with the universe. We feel bad when somebody dies because we're like, it ought not be like that. When we see somebody suffer abuse, we look and we go, it ought not be like this. When we see all of these things, there's the idea, and it's by the way, it is a crazy thing that in our heads we say it ought not be like it's always been. Have weak people been victimized by strong people? Yes. Always. Why in the world do we say it ought not be like that? Everybody should have enough to eat. We say things like that, right? Because it feels like we ought to be able to do that. Has there ever been a time in the universe, or ever time in history, we'll just limit it to history, has there ever been a time in history where everybody's had enough to eat? No. What's that? In Eden, before history. Yeah. In the before times. There's a sense that there's within our heart a call for something other than we've ever experienced. And we have such a surety of it. Dads must not abuse their kid. Whatever the deal is, whatever your thought is, where you're like, it shouldn't be like this. It's crazy because you look around and it's always like this. There's a hunger for something that we've never tasted. So how does the Genesis start out? Well, the writer of Genesis, by the way, the composer, the compiler, the writer of Genesis, Moses, he starts out describing how God put everything in order and we put things in disorder. So we have a hunger for the way that God created us. For the capital P purpose that he made for us, not the little p purposes that we choose to drive our own lives. Does that make sense? Okay. By the way, great. I love these. So Genesis, first 5 books of the Bible. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. These first 5 books, right? They're called different things in different languages. Does that surprise you? Okay, good. They're all worked together. They're not 5 individual books. They're 5 books that are united together for a common purpose. One of the problems with the Bible is sometimes we pull it out into so many small segments that we can miss the point. Sometimes verses are meant to be counterpoints to each other, and if we just take the counterpoint, we can err on one side or err on the other. So we want to see the whole hand grasped together. So Genesis, we'll look at this right here. And this is the one that talks about, first of all, why there's a hunger for the way the world isn't, and why things are screwed up, and on the one hand, on the other hand, and on yet the third hand, God's promised answer. So, Genesis 1:1. Okay, what's one of the earliest stories you guys remember in Genesis?
Adam and Eve.
Adam and Eve. Is there anything before Adam and Eve?
Creation.
The 7 days of the ordering of the land. Which, by the way, I love this artwork. Whoever did this, that I stole it from, these are like the 7 days of creation in clip art. Isn't that kind of fun? Isn't that smooth?
That's a good idea.
I love it. Is. It's hard for it not to be. So Genesis, right? And if you're looking right there, yeah. So this is Greek. That's a gamma, right? Gene. This right here, Juliet. This is a sigma, and this right here is a sigma. I put that up there in Greek just so I could say what the sigma for. No, for my middle schoolers. All right, so Genesis, that's in Greek. In Hebrew, it's in the beginning. The name of the book is in the beginning. It's the first word of the Bible in the 4 times. So here you go. That's what Genesis is. So we got the 7 days of creation, right? Where God sets order. Adam and Eve, where Adam and Eve is placed in the garden to worship. Day 6, you see them put in the land, in the eretz to worship. Humanity, men and women are put in the eretz. Then we see specifically the high priest, Adam, going into the kind of this temple. In a sense, the land is set or put order there in those 7 days to be a place where humanity and God can meet and man can worship God in the garden. It says, your translation might say work, but the sense of that word work is also serve, and it's related heavily to worship. So that's the purpose. That's it. Like church is a foretaste of what the garden was supposed to be like, coming together and walking with God. That's the sense of it. But then you start seeing a rebellion. It happens multiple times. Every generation seems to stumble. So you have this, you have Cain and Abel after Adam and Eve, and there's a stumbling and an increase, and then you have descendants of Cain that starts doing some knucklehead things, but there's some faithful people throughout the history, through the chapters. And then you get to Noah, right, where everything's all messed up in the land. The land, this special land that God has created to walk with humanity, to redeem humanity through this land. And what happens, God has to wash that land away. Why? Because it's been poisoned a little bit. He's got to clean out, he's got to pressure wash the church, right? Pressure washes them out. Noah comes back in, and then what's he do? He builds a vineyard, and it's the Garden of Eden again, and he gets drunk and screws up. And then we see that thing, and all of it goes through the first 11 chapters of Genesis up until right here, the story of the Tower of Babel, which is much more important than so many of us. A lot of us, we look at it, and we look at the story of the Tower of Babel in chapter 11, and we're like, oh, that's why we got languages. That's why I have to go to French class. I didn't like French class because I didn't do well, right? Or whatever the deal is. Tower of Babel is much more than that. Tower of Babel is the end of that story of rebellion and the beginning of the story of God's working to end that rebellion. So what we have here is you have this verse 11 coming in here. So this is after the flood. This says people are supposed to go be fruitful and multiply, go forth and subdue the land. It says they began saying to each other, let's make bricks and harden them with fire. And in this region, they used bricks instead of stone because, and then they sealed them with mortar, right? And they said, come, let's build a great city for ourselves with a tower that reaches into the sky. This will make us famous and keep us from being scattered throughout the world. Now, there's so much dense stuff in this that we sometimes just blow by it. We think this is like a children's story, about a prehistoric children's story, but it is the story about the ultimate rebellion, even more than you think. This isn't the story of how we get different languages. This is a story about why we do polytheism, why we worship those other gods. So, what had happened in history going up to this point is people were going to high places to where heaven and earth kind of touch, and they were trying to leverage whatever spiritual power they could to get their will in the world. And what bricks do is it makes it so that they could build a high place in any town they want. And they could get those spiritual powers to do whatever they want. That is what is happening here. There's a spiritual rebellion, and it's not just a spiritual rebellion of humanity. The word that they use for tower there in the ancient text is also the same kind of word for temple. It's a building that reaches heaven. It's like a stargate. Right? That's what they're looking at doing here. So what happens here is from this point on, you see all of these nations that are spreading around, that we see the table, as they are going out, they carry this idea and they worship these gods, lowercase g, that they can do to get their way. Because, if I want to take my brother's land, maybe I need to talk to this guy, this spiritual power that will help me take my brother's land. That's the sense of it. That's what goes on from this point on. So this polytheistic, this rebellion of the nations happens here. going forward. It's tragic, sad, but that's what happens. But God doesn't stop with that. What he does is he grabs Abraham right after this. Why does he grab Abraham? Because while the nations are lost following these other gods, these other purposes, these other desires, he grabs Abraham and he says, listen, from you, I'm going to bring a seed that will end the rebellion. All power and authority will go back under, all humanity will go back under Yahweh. It'll end the rebellion. And it's interesting because the promised seed to Abraham is kind of two things. There's a singleness, and the promised seed of Abraham is the Messiah, is Yahweh, or is Jesus. But it's also his descendants that are following Yahweh. It's really interesting. So from Genesis looking forward, you would see not only the Messiah, but those who are called by the Messiah's name is the seed. And you know what's interesting is when we look from the church back, what do we see? We see it's Jesus. And we see it as the body of Christ, which is the church. It's the same message. It's the same thread that's moving through there. So God sets this up. So Genesis sets it up. Right? So he puts out Genesis. All right, so we follow Genesis. Genesis all the way goes up to Joseph and the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. Go, Joseph, right? Is that too old for many of you?
No.
Okay. Well, there's out there. There's a musical. Ten Commandments, I figured that one was way. Prince of Egypt probably also is coming up. Okay, the Prince of Egypt movie is coming up. So after Genesis, what happens is these descendants of Abraham, they spread all over the place. In Genesis, but then there's a point where they go to Egypt. And it starts out good. It's a blessing to get them away from famine, but it doesn't go well for them there. So the story of the Exodus shows up next. Isn't that fun? I love it! By the way, this is like, makes an X sound. E-X-O-D, that's a delta. O, what, the sigma? Exodus, there's Greek again. That's where we get the name. Interesting. The name for Exodus in Hebrews is names. These are the names because that's the first line of it, of Exodus. The names in Hebrew, there were 5 scrolls, and if you open up the scrolls, the first couple words, that's where they get the name. So in the beginning starts out with in the beginning. The names of, these are the names. Because it starts out with, Exodus 1 is like, these are the names of the people that went to Egypt. Right? That makes sense. When we think of Exodus, we think the Greek name Exodus because, hey, that's where they leave Egypt, right? The Exodus. That kind of, and we do that a lot. We kind of, they go by that, we go by, we go by the Greek name. So what stories do you remember from Exodus? What stories do you remember from Exodus? Moses. Okay, Moses' life story is in the Exodus, for the first couple thirds. What kind of things do we remember about Moses? He killed a man. He killed a man. Right? He did kill a man. Yes. He is Hebrew. Ricky.
I was going to say he was a Hebrew. He was raised in the palace.
He's raised in the palace. Why is he raised in the palace? Remember, it says, the Jews were living in Egypt, but then there came a Pharaoh that didn't know that Joseph, right? And he hated him, and he decided that his solution was to kill all the male Israelites, right? That happens. And then Moses' mom puts him in a little rafty thing. He goes down there, and the Pharaoh's daughter finds him, and he gets raised in the palace. He gets taught all of these great things. That's why he knows Egyptian. That's why he knows all of these things. He knows these other stories. By the way, whoever, I'll just say this, we'll do some sleuthing. If we were to not just be, I know Jesus says that they're the books of Moses, so that's a good reason for us to believe that they're the book of Moses. But if we didn't believe Jesus for some reason, one way, if we were going to just CSI it, I will tell you this. Whoever wove together the first 5 books of Moses seems to use terms and names that were late Bronze Age, which are about the time of Moses, and they seem to use some Egyptian names while they're writing in Hebrew, they seem to use some Egyptian names for plants. So they were raised in Egypt. So you're looking for somebody that knows how to scribe, who's smart, who's literate, who lived in the late Bronze Age, who used Egyptian words and Hebrew words. Boy, this sounds a lot like Moses. You're going to get the internal evidence and the external evidence and all that. It really does point to Moses. I just love that. Okay, so Exodus. We have the burning bush moment though. Here's one of the things that is sometimes missed because we really like Moses so much. We think he's always a good guy, but you said he killed somebody, right? Because he was afraid that he was upset that his people were being abused. Why was his people being abused?
The Pharaoh had forgotten Joseph.
The Pharaoh that forgotten Joseph.
And they were slaves, so.
Yes. No. It is more than that.
Because they were trying to become Egyptians?
Because they were serving, before they were enslaved by the Pharaoh, they were enslaved by the gods of Egypt. That's why he says, choose this day who you serve. Right? Oh, it's not. It's above that. Choose this day who you will serve. The gods that your fathers served beyond the river. When they had become Egyptian, they were worshiping Egyptian gods. Because they were worshiping Egyptian gods, they were enslaved by the people serving the Egyptian gods. So their first fall wasn't a political one, it was a religious one. Which is how come it goes the opposite. So we have the burning bush, and here's some testament. You're like, oh, Rick, you're thinking a lot, but is that what the evidence is? Here's a question. Moses, great guy, right? Got all educated in Egypt, learned all this stuff in Egypt. Then after he murders them, he goes away and he's hanging out in Midian, and he sees the burning bush. And he knows it's Yahweh, right? No. He doesn't know who's the burning bush. He just knows the burning bush tells him to rescue his people. And he's like, well, who am I supposed to say sent me? What God? What spiritual power on top of a mountain is telling me to get this? And the burning bush says, listen, you know Abraham? Yeah, we know Abraham. You know Isaac? Yeah. You know Jacob? You know Joseph? I am their God. The creator of the heavens and the earth. It's not the God of Mount Moriah. It's not the God of Mount Sinai. It is the God of the creator of all things. And he's like, I don't even know your name, right? Isn't that what roughly he says, who do I say? I don't know your name. He does not know Yahweh. So he says, okay, I am. Tell him the I am sent. I am in Yahweh's name. The I am. Which, by the way, is a cool name for a transcendent. So before there was anything he was, this is really the sense of it. He's transcendent. He's created the universe. It's a huge thing. So that's what he's supposed to do. So the burning bush is Moses getting called back. Moses wasn't trying to free his people because he was a servant of Yahweh. He was trying to free his people because he didn't want to see his people suffer anymore under enslavement to the Pharaoh. So then who does God pick a fight with?
Pharaoh.
No.
Moses.
No. The gods of Egypt. The plagues of Egypt are against the gods of Egypt. That's why the priests are involved. That's why the other priests are coming in. And every time God does something, the priests are trying to do something. It is a spiritual battle because before they were enslaved by Pharaoh, they were enslaved by the gods of Egypt. So Yahweh's like, remember this God? He's nothing. Remember this God? She's nothing. You remember this God? And that's why the plagues of Egypt have to happen. After he frees them from the gods, then he frees them from the Pharaoh. And the Pharaoh is relatively easy. I mean, honestly, the Pharaoh's strength is his chariots. Try pulling a meteorite down, right? That's some of the other things that happens in the battle of the gods, right? That's what happens. And then, middle of Exodus, beautiful place, Exodus 19. All of these people, did they deserve to be saved?
No.
No. Did Moses deserve to save them?
No.
No. God called him. It's by grace that Moses is called. It's by grace that these people are rescued from the Egyptians. Now they're pulled out here, and God says, here's my purpose. Exodus 19, verse 5, it says, now if you will obey me and keep my covenant, this covenant, by the way, this is not keeping the law, keeping the 10 Commandments, keeping all of that. That's not what the covenant is. The covenant is to agree to be a priesthood for him. That is the singular covenant he's asking here in Numbers 15:6. And he says, you'll be my special treasure among all the peoples of the earth, for all the earth belongs to me. All those other gods, that they don't own the land, I do. He goes, and you will be my kingdom of priests, a holy nation, to serve to rescue the nations of the earth. That's what they're supposed to do. And you know what they do? They blink. The high point, Moses' story all the way up to Exodus 19 is the high point. Choose this day. Are you going to be a priesthood? Are you going to accept this covenant? He says, listen, I'm going to go up on the hill and I'm going to talk to God for a little bit. Make yourselves ready. Don't sleep with anybody. That's one of the things he said. I don't know why. He said, don't sleep with anybody. Take a fast. Get ready. Wash yourself. Prepare yourself. I'm going to be back in a couple days and tell you what it means to be God's priesthood. He goes up there and he comes back and he's like, okay, here we go. You guys ready? And they say to him this. They said to, hey, no. We thought about this. We've decided you speak to us, but don't let God talk to us directly, or we will surely die. They decided they did not want to be a kingdom of priests. They want to be a kingdom with priests. And our hearts should break at that, because the choice was laid out to them and they failed. So then what happens? Moses goes, ugh. He turns around, he goes up on the hill, he says, let's see what it's like to be a kingdom with priests. We come down and they start making this decision, and he's like, okay, I'm going to talk to it. And you know what happens while he's up there getting the rules to be a kingdom with priests? You know what happens? Anybody want to guess?
Start worshiping other gods.
The golden calf.
The golden calf! They're like, we'll just do this thing, and just this crisis here in Exodus. Now, Exodus, you like my little weaving? Exodus is woven to Genesis, so we see them all related. They're all connected. It's not read one book. They're all connected. The grand narrative is continuing. So what they decided to do is be that kingdom, and I love this little slide. I got this off this. Be mine, right? So this is kind of the rules for the Levitical priesthood. Why do we have rules for the Levitical priesthood? Because they knew how to worship other gods. They didn't know how to worship Yahweh. So the rules for the Levitical priesthood have some rules. Some of them you're going to understand. Oh, that makes sense. This is in Leviticus is kind of your love thy neighbor kind of stuff. That makes sense. But there's like don't mix clothes. That's also in there. You're like, I don't understand. Part of it is because Leviticus is also made to be pushing against the worship of gods in Egypt. So some of the things that they did for the gods of Egypt was, are they going to pray? You're going to pray. Are you going to fast? You're going to fast. There's some things that are similar, but then there's some things that are totally different. So what they do here is they kind of say, this is how we're different. This is how you're a holy man. You shall be holy to me, right? For I am the Lord. Oh, I love that. Anyway, so that's kind of what Leviticus does, is it sets this out. Now, I do love this. I'm going to do this. All right, again, Leviticus, Greek. That's a lambda. Leviti. Olivia, get it? You see Leviticus? Olivia going? That's where you get Leviticus. Does that make sense? Lambda, Levi, Toka. So, Hebrew, I think, is really cool. Because it's this right here, the Vayiktal right there, is and it came to pass, or and he, and this is Korah. And he called. Boy, that's such a cool name for Leviticus. Leviticus is kind of a clunky name, and he called people. That's beautiful. I love that. I think we'd like Leviticus more if we read and he called. But there you go. That's it. And that's what happens is he calls out this priesthood. And he starts giving them rules and all this on how to do it's how you do sacrifices and when you do sacrifice and all this in Leviticus. But it's all woven within that story of Exodus. Okay, but this was plan B. Plan B was to have priests, not to be priests. So how do you think plan B works compared to God's plan?
Falls short.
It falls short. The next book, Numbers, shows how short it falls. Now, I love this verse out of Numbers. I'm going to say it at the end of the service. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you, be gracious to you, and grant you peace. This is a beautiful blessing that the priests are supposed to pronounce on God's people. It is a beautiful thing. But you know what also happens in Numbers? Lots of grumbling. It's where all of that falls apart. It's where when people prioritize their own desires over God, there's a failure. It's called Numbers because, of course, Hebrew or Greek, we're following kind of that math word. So arithmetos or whatever, it's kind of the same. That goes to arithmetic. We don't want to call it the arithmetic book. People will be upset with it, right? So we go math, numbers. We call it Numbers. I think that Hebrew name is more appropriate. It's in the wilderness. And that's what they are, in the wilderness during this time. And what we see here is we see a lot of failure. What we see here is the problem that humanity always has, is that we believe the serpent from the garden. And not even what the serpent said. What we wanted him to say. The serpent said that if we ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that we would be like God. And that we would know good and evil. There is some truth to that. But it is not true. It is misleading. Because we believe that we will be like God meant that we will be able to determine good and evil. The problem in Numbers is repeatedly they call God evil for doing things for their good. Because we believe that eating the fruit means that we could call this good because it's happy and makes us happy, and this bad because it's uncomfortable and makes us sad. And we continue to believe that we can declare things good by vote. We all vote, it's now good. Congratulations, we all voted. We all vote, it's all bad. We don't have that power. When it says choose good and evil in the Bible, it is not telling us that we can declare this is good and this is bad. Good and bad has already been determined by God. The question is, which side of the line are we going to stand? Do we stand with the God Yahweh and what he says is good and trust that what he says is good? Or do we stand in opposition and say, my will be done? So what we see there is what they do in Numbers is they try to have their will with God's power, and it fails. That is why they're in the wilderness for 40 years. Everybody that make that choice to reject, nearly everybody, because there are two people that make the right choice. Bible scholars, who are the two people that make the right choice? Joshua and Caleb. Good job. It's extra credit. You get a special smoothie in heaven for having that answer. So Numbers shows that being comfortably distant from God does not save. Using God's power to get your will in the world is being in the wilderness. It is not a return to the way things ought to be. Moses knows this, and that's why he writes Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy is a big, long sermon. You're like, why are some of the same stories happening in Deuteronomy that happen in Numbers? Because what he's going is, hey, remember when this happened? He puts it all in a choice content. Choose today who you will serve. What does he say here? This is Deuteronomy 30. I call you as heaven and earth as a witness. Doesn't that sound like back to the very beginning of Genesis? To remember, to witness against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curse. Therefore, choose life that you may. And what is he asking you to do? Choose to follow Yahweh. For the love of God, choose to be his priesthood. So Deuteronomy is a long sermon. But it is a sermon with the choice. The choice, choose today who you will serve. That's beautiful, right? Then guess what happens? Then the writer of Joshua, I think these are fun too. Again, this word right here. That's a D-E-U-T-E-R-O-X, Deuteronomy. That word I think is great. Debar, that means word. So the Hebrew name for it is like the word, the speech, the message. Boy, if we call it the speech or message, we'd understand that it was him. He is summing up all the other 4 books and leaving it down. Listen, you could either have the faith of Abraham, or you could go and fall by the wayside. It's a call to faith. And he says, if you make this call, he's like, when you make this call, then God will make with you a new clean heart. He'll do all these wonderful things. When Moses is making the call to choose this day, he's not saying someday in 1,500 years after Jesus is born, I want somebody to make a call. He is making a call to the audience he has there. Choose today, choose life. It is a present tense call. It is not a future prophecy. It is an offering to them today. And you know what? The pattern follows. We get to Joshua, we see the same thing. They go into the land, right? The first half of Joshua, they're coming in and they're fighting the gods of the land, the priorities that other people have. And we see the same kind of miracles happening here that we saw happening with the plagues of the plagues of Egypt. To show God is more powerful than these spiritual desires, these spiritual things in this land. He tells them to be strong and courageous as they're going in. It's the same thing that Moses told them at the end of his bless and curses thing. He tells them to be strong and courageous. Choose the right thing. So they go in there, right? They do this. And what we have, the writer of Joshua, beautiful. He includes stories that counterbalance each other. So is it all people genetically related to Abraham that are good? No, some of them are bad, like Achan, right? But what about Rahab? She's a prostitute, which means not only does she probably make money, but she probably serves other gods. Prostitutes back then often were shrine prostitutes. But she chooses, so she has a bad religious experience before, she has a bad political experience, she has all of these things, but she chooses to follow Yahweh, and she gets adopted into the priesthood, or into the family of God. Achan, who comes from all these good things, he gets rejected. Because it's not where you come from, it's not all this. And that's kind of the sense. It's back to the choice that they made. It's not about the choice the parents made, it's about the choice that Rahab made. It's the choice that Achan made. That's the sense of it. And we continue on through that. And we see Israel going all the way through it. And then what happens is Joshua divides, the last part, he divides up the land. Why does he divide the land? Because every generation has to make the choice. And he says, your family is responsible for this area. This is your mission area. You are either going to serve the God that is working in the hill right there, or you're going to drive it out and serve Yahweh. That's what he says to him. That's why he says, if it's evil in your eyes to serve the Lord, choose today who you will serve, whether the gods your fathers served in the region beyond the river, or the gods of the Amorites in the land that you're now living. But he says, as for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord. Now that you have this place, are you going to focus your efforts on Christ, on serving the Lord? If so, then you're going to live that way. And they don't. Some do, a lot don't. We get to this choice that he made, or this choice that he lays before them, is the same choice that was laid out to the first hearers of Genesis. It's the same choice that is laid out to the people that heard the sermon in Deuteronomy, and it's the same choice today. Judges, going to be the same thing. We run in Judges, you see the same pattern. You see God continuing to work. When people choose to follow the gods of the world, they get enslaved by the gods of the world, but God offers a salvation to choose to them every generation. And we're also going to say this. I'll say this one last thing here. You're going to notice that there's patterns. The writer of Judges, I know I said it at the very beginning, I'll say it at the end. He is not giving you a compendium of every great Jewish Bronze Age general, and he's not even telling them the great battles that they did. He's not doing it. He's picking all these days to show what happens when people choose to serve Yahweh and the good outcomes, and what happens when they choose not to. But you also see the main character in the book of Judges is Yahweh, and Yahweh, going through all these 400 years of Judges, he continues to show that he is worthy, and sometimes we are not. So back to the very first question, why isn't the world the way we want it to be? Well, because we fail to choose Yahweh, and we follow the gods of the world, or the passions of the world, or the voices of this age, or whatever the deal is. It comes back to, once we get to Samson, same sort of thing, choose to stay. I will tell you this, Abimelech has a horrible history, like family backstory. He's a bastard. He's a bastard son, right? And you're like, look at him, and he turns out bad in many ways. And you're like, oh, see, that's it. But Jephthah has the exact same story. So he tells the story of Abimelech, the writer of Judges, tells the story of Abimelech and Jephthah, so that we can really recognize that just because they have a bad story at the beginning does not mean the outcome is going to be bad. That their faith in Yahweh determines kind of that sort of stuff. And we're going to see the last two judges that we'll look at will be spread out over 3 weeks. Samson and Samuel also have the same story, the same origin story, more or less. But one, knucklehead, bad outcomes. One prepares for the King David. All right, and that catches you up. You guys feeling good? Could you not tell the story of the Bible up to Samson? Roughly? All right, good. Well, we got context. Let's go to the Lord in prayer really quick. Father God, we thank you for your word, which even though it spans hundreds of years in the story that we're looking at, the choice is a present tense choice. The present tense choice today to either serve the desires that are popular, the purposes that are offered up around us, the blame games, of whatever it is all around us, the loud voices of all around us, or choose to serve you. Lord, help us have that courage that you ask us to have, so that we can say, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Lord, we thank you. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. I told you I'd give you the blessing. Here it is from number 6. Hey, it's been going around for 3,000 years. That's pretty good. We'll keep it up, 3,500 years maybe. I pray the Lord bless you and keep you. I pray he makes his face to shine upon you, to be gracious to you and grant you peace. Amen.